Joining me now is one of the country's foremost scholars on racism, who literally wrote the book on how not to be racist. Ibram X. Kendi is a professor and founding director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at the American University. It was just announced that he is joining Boston University to launch the BU Center for Anti-Racist Research. He's also a best-selling author and National Book Award winner, and his new book, Anti-Racist Baby, comes out June 16th. And despite being published last summer, Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, has shot all the way to #1 on the latest New York Times hardcover nonfiction list. Ibram, thank you so much for being with us. You know, I issued a commentary a couple weeks ago to say, look, it's not enough to not be a racist. You have to be an anti-racist. And I was shocked at the amount of pushback I got from this, from people who feel that they experience that guilts them, that if I'm not a racist, why should I be made to feel guilty for not being a racist? And it belies a misunderstanding of what the privilege of not being subject to racism gives you. In other words, if you live a life not subject to police brutality or economic inequality because of racism or social inequality, you are actually benefiting from a system that punishes someone else.
You are. And unfortunately, many Americans like to imagine that there's this in-between state, that there's this neutrality. But the reality is that we have a system, we have a pervasiveness of racial inequality in this country. We have a scenario in which Black people are disproportionately dying of police violence, like we're disproportionately dying of COVID-19. And to do nothing in the face of that racial injustice, to do nothing in the face of racial inequity, to do nothing in the face of persistent Black death, is to allow that to continue, is to be racist. And then you have other people who are fighting against those injustices, who are fighting against COVID disparities, who are fighting against police brutality. And those of us who are fighting against it are being anti-racist.
You know, I've had people on Twitter overnight, since we reported this last night, saying he didn't need to resist arrest. He didn't need to run. He didn't need to do these things. I remind people that when the police arrested the Charleston shooting suspect who shot up a number of Black people at a church in Charleston, they bought him a Burger King hamburger. Police don't necessarily have to use this kind of violence on someone who didn't perpetrate any of it. This guy was called. Police were called on this gentleman on Friday night because he was asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, and I think what this comes down to is it's obvious that Black people are disproportionately dying of police violence. So then the question becomes, what or who is to blame? Are Black people to blame? Are they reckless with the police? Should they not be resisting arrest? Is there something wrong with Black people that other racial groups are not doing? Or is there something wrong with American policing? Or is there racism pervading American policing? And those Americans who just refuse to recognize how persistent and pervasive racism is within this country, of course, the only other alternative is to blame Black people, is to blame the person who was shot in the back the other night.
Talk to me about what the first step is, other than buying your book. The first step is in learning what the distinction is between anti-racist and not being racist. And America got a touch of this during the Me Too episodes, right? Where we learned that, it wasn't okay not to victimize women, not to treat women badly. But if you're part of a system in which women are not treated properly, then you are benefiting from that. In the same way, how do those of us who are not racist become anti-racist?
The heartbeat of racism is denial. And every American who is believing in expressing racist ideas, every American who's supporting racist policymakers and policies that are leading to racial inequities and injustices, they typically believe that their ideas, that their policymakers, that their policies are not racist, in the way slaveholders believed they were not racist Jim Crow segregationists believe they were not racist. You have Ku Klux Klansmen walking around saying they're not racist. And so the first step is to admit, to acknowledge one's own racist ideas, to acknowledge those times in which we were being racist, so that we can then begin transforming ourselves and transforming this country.
It is our responsibility, all of ours, to understand this. And if reading Ibram's book helps you do that, then that's the first step. Ibram X. Kendi is the founding director of the Anti-Racist Policy Center at American University. He's the author of the book, How to Be Anti-Racist. His latest upcoming work, Anti-Racist Baby, hits bookstores this week. Thank you, Ibram, for being with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.